Alright guys, so today I want to talk about a hypothetical scenario. The scenario is this: if Windows were as private and secure as Linux, would I switch to using Windows? I know that lately I've been doing quite a bit of anti-Windows videos. I'm not gonna lie, it's getting a little bit monotonous. I don't really want to keep doing these. This is pretty much just, I guess, gonna be like my last anti-Windows video because I do have some projects that I want to be doing. I want to be doing more cool stuff on the channel, more directly Linux oriented stuff. I'm actually working on a project video that I'm going to be doing where I'll be demonstrating libreboot on ThinkPad T500. I bought a crappy programmer for that, so I'm having to kind of modify it a little bit. The programmer's all right. It's the clip. I'm having to solder wires in there in a specific way because I couldn't get a read on it because I don't know how it's wired. But with that out of the way, let me go ahead and do my video essay here. So I think I can speak for most of us that one of the biggest reasons that a lot of us use Linux is not only because our belief in the free software movement, but also because Linux is a private and secure operating system. But as most of you who are more power users, so to speak, know that fundamentally, Unix likes operate on the basis of a much simpler process and workflow, which yes, includes Macs. However, despite the Unix-like nature of macOS, macOS isn't really used like this, so this isn't why I'm including it in this comparison. So first things first, under the hood, Linux isn't configured really anything like Windows, and when I say configured, I don't mean like your desktop environment. I mean the things that really matter, which are the configuration of the actual software is being used on Linux, as well as the system's configuration itself. Once again, I'm not referring to the desktop environment. What I will touch on that point later on, I'm referring to the actual behavior of your system. On Unix and Unix-like operating systems, every single thing that you interact with is a file that you can either edit in a text or run, and Windows isn't like this. Windows requires you to interact with a complicated registry system, group policy editor, and all those things in order to achieve the same feats. My second reason is that Linux is far more extensible than Windows is. I have touched on the Unix philosophy in my previous videos. Well, despite what many people believe, those of us that actually do work on Linux know full well that well-designed single-purpose tools on Linux are still king, because not only piping, which does exist on Windows too, but scripting. Don't get me wrong, scripts do exist on Windows, but they are limited in comparison to the power of scripts on Linux because of how the binary folder works on Linux. Yes, you can achieve the same functionality on Windows, but that builds on my last point, which is that Windows works on a much simpler basis rather than how Windows does, because you pretty much should have to like add the file to your path, which is also possible on Linux, but you can't necessarily just like add it to the binary folder. You have some extra steps, which can be a bit complicated if you start adding several scripts to your system. My third reason is that Linux has choice. Now I will admit that you can to an extent modify dwm.exe on Windows to achieve some of the functionality that Linux Windows managers have, such as a tiling window manager that I recently saw on the Friendly Windows General thread on 4chan, which mimics Suckless's DWM. But the thing is that, to put it in my terms, that shit is janky, man. Windows wasn't designed to do this. Windows was designed to be used a certain way, and at the end of the day, these are hacky solutions to try and fix what is effectively an inferior desktop environment. On Linux, you have the choice of many desktop environments such as XFCE, KDE, GNOME, Budgie, Deepin, and if that is too much for you, you have countless more window managers such as DWM, Awesome Window Manager, Spectre Window Manager, OpenBox, Xmonad, Sway, TWM, Rat Poison, Monster Window Manager, Franken Window Manager. I could go on for hours naming all of the window managers that exist out there that like less than 10 people on the planet use. There is a desktop environment or window manager out there for every workflow, and with each one you can choose your own set of tools that best suit your needs, whether that be size, functionality, or complexity. You can choose your tools on Windows as well, but at the end of the day, they only serve to be add-ons, as many of the built-in tools are not removable unless you ameliorate your installation, which you should go and check out my videos on Windows AME for more on that. My fourth reason is that Windows is a horribly unoptimized operating system, especially in comparison to Linux. Let's face it, Linux is a far more streamlined operating system, both above and especially under the hood. I know that sometimes you can see some janky things on Linux from time to time, but you Windows users out there are not fooling me. I have seen just as much, if not jankier things on Windows, because although I daily Linux, I still have quite a bit of experience with Windows. Windows AME defaults at about 1.5 to 2 gigabytes of RAM at idle on a fresh install, and that is a heavily de-bloated version of Windows. My fifth and final reason is that at the end of the day, Windows is still a proprietary operating system. Even if Windows were as secure and private as Linux, how would you or I really know this? At the end of the day, even if they said it and it were true, there is no way we could ever know, because it is not open source. And even if Linux were a source available operating system, which means that we're not Libre, it would still be a better alternative because you know what you are getting. With Windows and Mac OS, you do not.